Mike,
Steve.
you know, while we're writing season 2 of The Last Resort, what we should really do with our times, we could discuss the characters' favourite movies.
Interesting concept, Steve, because I like movies and, well, you like movies and our characters like movies too.
Then it's settled. The Last Resort Movie Club is born. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bad Scripts Presents The Last Resort Movie Club. Joining me as ever, Mr. Mike Garlia. How are you today, Mike?
Very, very well, Steve. Thank you very much for having me back on my own show. Our own show.
I thought you were taking control there. I thought this was an aggressive takeover we were having. So
you do such a good job. I don't think I could compete with you in your styling.
So last week, just to recap for anybody that hasn't listened yet, was Vlad's choice. Vladimir, the resident circus performer and inept character, and his favourite movie, Howard the Duck. That was a divisive one. Some of our listeners love it, some of them not so much. Tonight, we've got a different character we're talking about, and that character, I'm happy to say, is our Welsh Supremo, Pete. And Mike, I believe you're going to give us the synopsis of the movie to allow our listeners who haven't checked out our social media to find out exactly what film we're going to be covering.
So we're sticking with the 80s, so it seems. And as we know, Pete is a man of few words in the show, but he obviously has very strong feelings for this film. And the film we are covering today is Mannequin. So here is the synopsis of Mannequin, which came out in February of 1987. Okay. Jonathan Switcher, an unemployed artist, finds a job as an assistant window dresser for a department store. When Jonathan happens upon a beautiful mannequin he previously designed, she springs to life and introduces herself as Emmy, an Egyptian under an ancient spell. Despite interference from the store's devious manager, Jonathan and his mannequin fall in love while creating eye-catching window displays to keep the struggling store in business. That's the synopsis of the film.
Wow. Okay. Well, as this is Pete's favourite film, I think we can dig around in the archives and find Pete's audition tape, and he will tell us on there exactly why this was his favourite movie. Take it away, Pete.
Now, coming from a small village in Wales, I would say that my favourite film of all time would be Mannequin, the movie. Now, the reason why that's my favourite film is because, although Kim Cattrall is in it, I'm a big, big fan, and I love Sex and the City, and I first discovered her in Mannequin. But the secondary reason why I love it so much is because of the brilliant character, Hollywood. Hollywood is a character in the film that goes by his own rules, dresses the way he wants to dress, and accepts his own personality despite what anybody else thinks. And as a young boy in Wales, it really inspired me to build my own man, to follow my own dreams, which is what led me to Camp Holidays. Now, it may not be the best film in the world, there's certainly better ones out there, but for a feel-good fairy tale film, it is one of my favourites.
Thank you, Pete, for that. Really interesting to hear, the impact that characters from movies have had on our own characters. So a bit of fun. I think we should just get straight on into this one, Mike, because this is a film close to my heart. I know that the theme song from this was my first dance at my wedding, and you were there. You were the best man. I was the better man. It was a fun day, and it's a fun song, and I think it carries a lot of meaning. So let's start right at the beginning, shall we? And the scene in Egypt where the movie takes us to set the scene. What were your thoughts about the very beginning?
I thought it was the most American I've ever seen Egypt being, actually. With two
No,
actresses.
no expense was spent on it, was it? There was no exterior scenes. It was all done inside what looked like a bit of a cardboard set in a tomb.
I mean, it opens with the Kim Cattrall character, Emmy, hiding in a tomb as a mummy, so fully wrapped in bandages. And then her mum comes in and they have a bit of a discussion. There's going to be a theme running through this for me, Stephen. Now, I know that you have strong emotional ties to this film. I did watch this film when I was a kid, maybe once. I got to say, the theme for me is I just didn't get it. Like throughout, like any scene, I just could not get it, including this scene where I'm not sure what it was, and it was so they're having an argument, and you think she's going to marry someone rich, and because they look rich, because they would have to be to own a tomb and have mummies in there, and they've got mummies literally up against the wall as well.
It's a bit of, it is a little weird, isn't it? And I think that the point that they're trying to make is that she's turned everybody else in the village or the town or the kingdom down, and this is literally the last guy, the camel dung dealer. Now I'm not sure who deals in camel dung and whether it was a big commodity back in ancient Egypt.
Well, I mean, they were living in E04, Egypt, and the title card that came up just said E04, Egypt, a really long time ago. Then it paused, and then it went before lunch. And I'm like, oh, does that have some relevance to everything? But I guess it's setting out a theme of comedy, isn't it? And I thought it was going to be quite spoofy.
And I think that was it, wasn't it? It was a bit zany. It was a kind of a, look, guys, we're funny. Look, before lunch, we're giving you such specifics. But yeah, it was a weird one. And like you say, her mum was the most American Egyptian I've ever heard. I mean, I'm not brilliant, but I would say it's an East Coast accent, definitely.
She was very, very American, Steve. Very, very American. As is Kim Cattrall as well. But did you get this? It started like a carry-on film. I don't know if you picked up on that. That's the feel I got.
I think right through it, and I probably didn't think this as much as a kid, but it's very, very much like a traditional British pantomime. A lot of the comedy and a lot of the humour is very slapstick and a little bit tongue-in-cheek and a little bit saucy, and that sort of ties right through the whole film, not just in these opening scenes. So I guess she doesn't want to marry any of these guys, right? She doesn't want to be tied down. She says she wants to invent things. She wants to be a creator. And she prays to the gods to help her in this quest. And how do they repay her? The gods. How do the gods respond to this?
Well, I guess they curse her from what it sounds like. She just disappears, but we don't know where she goes.
It does feel like a curse, doesn't it? Because it's like, oh, by the way, I'm just going to rip you out of your life. It's not a case of, oh, we'll give you the opportunity to go off and do the things you want to do. Instead, what we'll do is we will make you disappear into time and become inanimate objects and only be seen by one person. To me, doesn't feel like they're really honouring that, that request, or at least if they are, that you wonder which god it is. Is it sort of a Loki figure that believes in mischief and wants to cause trouble?
I kind of wonder whether she had magical powers, because she seems, and again we're kind of jumping around it a little bit, but she seems to be able to switch it on and switch it off whenever she wants. And then she can't control it, and then she does control it, but then she can't. It doesn't explain itself at all, and then it moves on very quickly to this really crazy animated title sequence where she's running and there's like snakes and bears and platypuses all chasing her around and stuff like that, and it's very much Benny Hill. And I was just wondering what the tone was.
It felt to me like that should have come before the Egyptian scene. like the live action scene, because it's very much like a setup to that after that's already happened. So it's a really weird thing, and I get it. It's kind of like the whole beginning of Grease, you know, the musical Grease. When the movie there, that has that similar sort of tone, that kind of cartoony and a zany way about it. And then we end up coming through to modern day, and we're met with our other protagonist, and Jonathan. So Jonathan's an artist, right? Yeah, this is the image we get, because we see him getting repeatedly fired from jobs, right? For being slow and artistic or creative in the stuff he's doing, but he's working menial jobs. So he's basically slow and not getting the work done. He's trying to be too much of a perfectionist. Is that fair to say?
It starts with him putting together and talking in a very sensual way to this mannequin he designed, and very detailed. I don't know if you picked up on that, Steve. Anatomy wise, you don't usually get that with mannequins. I don't think, at least that, you know, every time I go into shops and have a peek, that you know, there's not that much detail there, but this one had a huge amount of detail, and it's clear he's got a thing for this plastic, for this doll he's created.
Yeah, it's kind of like he spends so much time making her visually perfect. Like, he doesn't take second best with any of the elements. So the legs have to be right, the torso has to be right. It just had to be perfect. And I guess that's the premise, that the time and the love that he put into making it is what drew her spirit into the mannequin, is what they're essentially saying in that. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
So in that scene, right, it alludes to the fact that he had drafted her, molded her, and made her, but the place he's working at is just fixing them up, because there's parts everywhere. He's kind of finding the perfect hands and the perfect legs and stuff like that. And he's meant to produce what 8 of these a day or something, and he's produced like a couple, and that's the reason why he gets fired. But did he mold her? And where would he have done that? Because it didn't explain
no,
that.
I think from the way I take it is, yes, this is the factory where they're built, but he's in the assembly department. So they make all these different elements in the factory, and he's at the end of that production line, putting them together to be shipped out, rather than, you know, doing the whole process. It's a production line, and that's what is expected of him. But he wants to make the best he can make, and wants to bring his artistic nature through into it. And I guess we see that through the other jobs he then gets after he gets fired. You know, he works in a pizza restaurant where he spends forever making his pizza. Unfortunately, the pizza doesn't come to life and try and kiss him. So that's definitely a bonus.
Well, maybe he tried to kiss the pizza. Who knows? He seems, you know, very natured towards inanimate objects, and seen the beauty in it as well. But there was a scene. So that factory is a very happy place. So, you know, the song "My Girl" by the Temptations is playing on the radio. He starts dancing around. Everyone's dancing around and having a really good time. And then it just kind of takes a bit of a weird direction. And there was something you said on a previous podcast, on the Staying Alive podcast, where you were saying everyone is so aggressive, and everyone around our main character is exactly the same. It must be just a sign of the times that everyone's really, really nasty to him. All right, he's getting fired left, right, and center, but
yeah, and I think that's right. It's like, and it was the same in the Howard the Duck one. You know, anybody in a position of authority, you know, who's supposed to be a senior member of staff, is really nasty. And you know, it's a long time ago. I'm not sure if I remember myself back then. I was still reasonably young. We didn't get treated like that by employers. Not many years after this.
Well, were you working as a 6-year-old, Steve? I mean,
yeah, I was up the chimneys with my sweeping. Yeah, full on Dick Van Dyke. Yeah, Mary Poppins.
By my count, in the first 8 minutes of the film, he has 4 jobs. One's the mannequin maker. The other one is a balloon modeler, and it's he gives a balloon to a kid who takes off. He then becomes a gardener or a landscaper, and designs a hedge that the manager doesn't like, and he gets fired And then the final role you're talking about is he's a pizza maker. So all, obviously very, roles that don't require a lot of skills, but, he's an artist and he's, he wants to switch it up because his name's Jonathan Switcher.
And I think what got me was the balloon one, right? So he grabs the balloon he's not supposed to give him because it's the logoed balloon for the company. He grabs it quite nonchalantly, brings it down and hands it to the kid, right? The kid starts to take off and then he struggles to pull the kid and the balloon down. Despite the balloon now having substantially more weight on it, he can't seem to pull the kid down. And I was like, but you literally just handed it to the kid a second ago and were perfectly capable of doing it. So I know it's a movie, but it just felt a little inconsistent there for me in that moment. I was pulled into reality.
Did you see his manager's face, though, with the way he gave this really hammy, shocked look, then turned to him and went, "You're fired," and then gave a really hammy, shocked look again? It was like, yes, brilliant performing.
I think I would have waited till the kid was safe before I fired anybody. You know what I mean? Let's keep everybody on board to try and get the child from dying a horrible death, falling out of the sky.
Being gobby. We've dealt with kids like that. He was like, "I'm telling my dad on you unless you give me that. My dad is paid for this. You better give me it." So he goes, "Yeah, all right," and he just gives away. Nothing out of malice, because Jonathan is by and large as the hero, I suppose. He's a really nice guy. But is he? And I'm going to come on to this point because as we talk about this, is he really a nice guy? Because the true victim is his girlfriend, who are introduced next. I think Roxy is the victim. Roxy is the victim.
Yeah, and it's a funny one with Roxy because although she technically works for the bad guy, she's not really a bad person. I mean, she's kind of influenced. And so when we meet Roxy, and this was something that I'm going to take a little sidestep on. He turns up on his motorbike to meet her from work to give her a lift home, right? Doesn't drive herself. He's gone there to pick her up on a immaculate and rather nice looking Harley Davidson motorcycle. Okay, this is not cheap shit. This is not a crappy old Honda scooter. This is a nice bike, right? And all her colleagues go, "Oh, look at that bucket of bolts," and she's embarrassed to ride on it. Now, most people I know got picked up on a Harley Davidson. It's going to be pretty damn impressed, but they sort of set the scene out that, oh yeah, this isn't very cool at all.
Now, one of them uses a Mad Max 2 reference as well. The film is riddled with movie references, which is little nods to the camera, which is rare for a film in the 80s to kind of be that aware. Like there's two dogs in it. One's called Rambo and the other one's called Terminator. They're doing these I don't know why they're doing it, but yeah, somebody actually says to him, "Oh, here comes Mad Max 2, the Road Warrior," or something like that, because he's on this motorcycle.
Yeah.
His girlfriend, Roxy, she seems okay. I mean, her character changes dramatically throughout the film because at the start she's holding on to him and she wants to go out for dinner. He's been fired again. They have that discussion. He tells her, "What about a hot dog and a nice walk in the park?" Which sounds quite lovely. And then she immediately says, "No, you need to go and see a psychiatrist." And then immediately turns and was like, "Well, you're not coming home with me tonight because I don't think that would do you any good."
I mean, and never has a guy ever thought, "Yeah, you're right," when someone said that to them. But at the same point, it is a bit strange, isn't it? Like, just hold down a goddamn job, you weirdo. Because yes, it was the 80s, and it was a time when there were, especially in this town, the jobs were plentiful in those, in those sort of what would you call them, entry level jobs. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to hold one down and, put things aside and be artistic in your own time, in your downtime, and not have to be completely uncompromising in your artistic nature to not be able to get a steady paycheck. Seems like, I can understand why Roxy might be a little hesitant to progress their relationship forward if she felt she's going to end up being the breadwinner.
I didn't believe the relationship. There wasn't enough time to embed it, and you didn't see any private time. I didn't buy it. It was a foil to move the story along, to be honest with you. And here's another thing as well. I don't know if you picked up on this. Did you notice throughout the entire film he wore bowling shoes.
Yeah, pretty much the whole way through, wasn't it? It
The
was
whole way through, and he's sliding around like that. I actually looked into that because I thought, was that his choice or not? And it was generally they said, well, you can wear whatever shoes you want. And he was like, I'll just wear bowling shoes. That's my character right there. That kind of, I don't know why, but he pulls it off clearly.
So the reason then he essentially comes looking for work, and he stood outside the department store, admiring the new sign that was going up, celebrating 100 years of the store. What do you think of our sign? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of good. And then there's a bit of an accident, and the sign starts to fall down, and he saves her life, and then somehow ends up mounting the sign as it flies through the air. I'm not quite sure how that series of events happens that he's back in front of it.
Speeded up as well, so it looks so comedic because he's swinging up and down on this sign, and everyone's just stood there watching him. You know, I've got a different take on that, Steve, actually, because I thought he was stalking the mannequin, because after Roxy tells him to go, he notices her in the window and stares at her. Then he talks to her for a bit, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a bit sad," and he's in the rain, and his motorcycle's not working. And then he goes back to the store the next day to see her again. So he is genuinely stalking a mannequin at that point.
Yeah, I guess so. And I guess it looks like he's, there as a shopper or there for some other reason. But so then he, Estelle says to him, there must be something I can do to thank you for saving my life. And he says, well, I could use a job. She marches him down to, and James Spader's character arrives. Now,
with a Hitler haircut.
I must admit, I love Spader in these roles because I think he does it so well. He is so slimy and so creepy. It's a brilliant role, and then you see him in other things and you're like, oh, wow, that's really not him. He was great in Stargate and things like that. But and The Office, the American Workplace, that he's great in that too. But this, it was just a real great character role. He felt like it. Do you know what he felt like? He felt like he should have been a baddie in like a Richard Donner movie, like The Goonies or something. He has that real proper pantomime villain feel to him.
A panto villain is exactly what I wrote down. He's got this slick down haircut, side parting, which he's very, very proud of. These kind of horn rim glasses, and
he's almost hunched over as well, isn't he?
He plays it. He's still got that James Spadery style about him because he's got a voice like silk to me. I could just watch him and I find him quite funny. But yeah, he hams it up and he plays it for laughs, and you can tell he's doing that. Made a decision to go, you know what, I'm absolutely going for it. I don't know if it was one of his first roles, actually. I don't know what he does in this store because it's never really said what he did. He has an office, but he doesn't. No. I don't know whether he's a store manager.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? It's like because he has a seat in the boardroom when he's talking to the board to say later on, and Estelle Getty does introduce him and says he needs a job, sort it out for him, get him a job. So he gets sent down to sort of like the to become a stock boy, doesn't he? Basically, the lowest of the low, the job that he could give him that was probably the least pay and the least responsibility, because he takes an instant dislike to him. He's like, oh, well, do you want me to give him $5 should be enough as a thank you? But really, he's after a job, and that's perfectly fine. So he gets the job and he's sent off on his way, and instantly James Spader's character just takes a real disliking to him for no apparent reason and calls in his favorite security guard. And
he can smell the scent of a better man.
You think that's what it is?
That's what it is. He walked in and he immediately threatened his alpha maleness.
Is that how you feel when I come into a room and you're there?
Well, we haven't been in a room together for the last 2 years, so.
But maybe you can remember. I just wanted to see if that was a thing that happened, but there we go. So yeah, he calls in his security guard. I guess you'd call him like a henchman, really, isn't he? He's and a very familiar face during the 80s and early 90s. And the security guard played by the same actor who appeared as the antagonist in many of the Police Academy movies.
He essentially plays the same character, doesn't he?
Well, he does, but I think this character is supposed to be a lot dumber than the character he played in Police Academy movies. But sometimes he kind of slips out of that. Sometimes he seems dumb, and other times not quite. And he plays it a lot more slapstick. I kind of couldn't quite, because he's essentially wearing the same uniform as well. He looks like he's wearing a police uniform, even though it's a store thing. And he essentially feels like they've gone, you know what, the security guard should be like the guy from Police Academy, and they've gone, well, let's just ask him. And he's gone, yeah, I'll do it. So they basically just stuck him in there and do that. And it kind of then was difficult in my brain to switch off from him not being that nasty sergeant.
Exactly the same. As soon as I saw that, because again, you've got two elements of Police Academy here, right? If you remember the film, Kim Cattrall was in Police Academy as well as him. So they're both in the same film again for the second time, and it felt like Police Academy again, except it didn't have Steve Guttenberg anywhere. And maybe they tried Steve for the main role, and maybe he said no, I don't know. But he had half-mast trousers, and he was very aggressive all the time.
White socks and black shoes.
White socks and black shoes.
Yeah, with black trousers, black shoes, and white socks. That's unforgivable even in the 80s. You know, you could probably get away with luminous green or luminous pink, but white, it was just like, ooh, that's...
You're bringing back my primary school childhood now, Steve, so just be very careful, okay? I was that kid walking around on my own with half-mast trousers, white socks, and black shoes, okay? And I turned out okay, I think.
Well, that's a matter of debate, but... So now he's got the job, right? He's working in the stock room. Jonathan has. The security guard's keeping an eye on him, and he starts to hunt around the building to try and find the mannequin that he built, that he knows is now residing in the present.
Around the building.
Well,
he's stalking around the building.
You would say stalking if it was a real person, but at the moment he just feels an affinity for this thing he created, and he genuinely seems to love his creation, his artistry. And he searches the entire store. And this store, I don't know if this store is the largest department store in the world, but it appears that you can hand glide inside it. You can run around it with no one else hearing you, or somebody that you've had a fist fight with who is still in the building cannot hear you getting up to shenanigans and not come after you. So it's a little bit of a strange...
Anything goes in this place as well. Anything goes. You can wake up naked in a pile of fur coats, and people applaud you when that happens. And, you know, they are very liberal in this building, in this large building as well. But on that point, right, because there's an interesting scene that interjects all of this, where it goes to the rival department store.
Yes.
Because there's always a rivalry, where Roxy works. And we don't quite know what Roxy does. In fact, let's just be clear. Apart from Jonathan and Hollywood, another character that we'll come on to in a minute, no, we don't know what anyone else does. They're just there.
Yeah.
But
is that one of those situations where it was in the 80s where it's like, what do you do? I do business. And it's like, no, that's not a job. Business is not a job, right? You have a role, you have a job that you do. Business is not a definition of a job. So yeah, it was one of those where you don't need to worry about what they do. That's not important to the story. You just got to know they work for this rival.
They're just there. But something really bothered me, right? And I don't want to make this dark or any worse, but there was an ongoing scenes throughout this involving Roxy with this really creepy Italian coworker. And he's like, hey, oh yeah, and he's and it's, for want of a better word, really bad and abrasive sexual harassment consistently throughout. And it's played for laughs, but he says some really, and I'm talking cringeworthy things to her. And I don't know about you, and this harks back to quite a few of the films that we've covered, and it's just coincidence that we've covered films because it's of a time. it happens quite a lot in a lot of the films that we've been covering in this one, as in it's just been acceptable to treat the female characters like a piece of meat, or come onto them and not think anything of it. And it's the Italian guy does it, but he's not the only one. And this is partly why I'm saying, actually, Jonathan's meant to be a boyfriend, and he goes off with a mannequin. She's getting sexually harassed by the Italian guy. Her boss is giving her a bit of crap throughout all the time, actually. No wonder she does what she does through the film, because she's just trying to get by. And I really felt for her. I did genuinely feel for her. And I got really, really creeped out by the way the male characters were acting around her. I'll get off my soapbox, but I just wanted to say that now.
I think you're right. And I think it is one of those things that, we do, and we don't very often get serious on this podcast. Let's be honest about that. But it does make you understand how far things have come. And I know we've made great strides in the last few years with the Me Too movement and stuff, and that finally people are having a voice that that your colleagues, it shouldn't matter what their sex is, you treat everybody equally, right? And I was stunned and shocked by the movies that we watched, just how appallingly women were treated in these movies, and just accepted it because, and I think back to when I was a child, because obviously watching this as a 7, 8, 9-year-old, you assume that's just normal, right? But when you watch it retrospectively as an adult, with hindsight, you go, this is just awful. How can anybody behave like that to another human being and think it's okay and think there's no repercussions? It's absolutely batshit crazy. And I think that occasionally we see comeuppance for these characters in quite a slapstick fashion. But I think it's the sort of resigned nature of a lot of the characters' responses to it. The female characters' responses to it is just a resigned acceptance of this behavior. And I think that was the really troubling thing, You could get people like that. There are still people that are like that to this day, but there's repercussions and people don't accept being treated like that because it's not right.
I won't labour it, but there were 4 individual scenes where the same Italian guy comes onto her. Basically, not just coming onto her, he gets physical with her. He asks her for sex quite a few times. He tries to use different mechanisms to make this happen.
Well, he offers to expose himself to her, doesn't he? He says, "Let me show you this." Yeah. It's like, wow, okay.
And she just kind of shakes it off a little bit, and then and it doesn't spoil anything. To the final time, she's so fed up, she goes, "Oh, let's just go and do it." And it's almost in a way of, if it gets you off my back, if it gets you away from me, I'll just do it. And then his comeuppance as a character, as you were talking about, was the fact that it wouldn't work. And then it's her fault and not his. And he actually says, "This must be your fault. This never happens to me before." And she leaves the apartment, and he's there moaning and crying and going, "What's going on here? What's going on?" And I'm like, it's not her fault.
Yeah, and maybe that's a subliminal commentary on, his behavior has led to his impotence there, and that's why, because he's all talk and what have you. So who knows? But anyway, we digress. We've talked about Roxy a little bit there, I guess, and so we really need to get back to Jonathan, because again, we've not yet seen our mannequin come to life, but it's about to happen. I believe that Jonathan finds the mannequin that he created, and he starts talking to her and looking at her, and I think he wants to sort of steal her, essentially, doesn't he, and take her home. I mean, for what purposes? Who knows? But then we're introduced to a classic character from this movie, and I think the only one that follows it into the sequel, and that is Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Now, Hollywood, to me, I think was the first real openly gay character I saw in a movie, who wasn't a victim, or wasn't overly sexually aggressive with the other guys in it, because we learn he has a whole relationship going out of the outside of the story that we're witness to, his friend Albert.
His friend Albert. So Hollywood's introduced to the main character, and he's got he's obviously got a definitive style about him. He wears glasses almost throughout 95% of it. All these different designer glasses, very 80s Timmy Mallet style glasses.
So he went,
yeah,
or Elton John. He's got that kind of like crazy, style. He's a window dresser. So let's put it out there. Let's just say he's a window dresser. He is very at peace with his sexuality and is openly gay. And is very flamboyant with the way he dresses and the way like you say, his glasses and everything. And he seems like a very fun and sort of alive guy.
This is where our opinion differs here. I found him incredibly annoying. I thought his performance was really over the top, really, really hammy, and I don't know whether it was the scripting and what he was being asked to say, because you could tell it's been written by straight guys, right? It's not, the way,
It did feel a bit that way, didn't it?
Because Hollywood makes friends with Jonathan really, really quickly, really connects with him almost immediately, and then goes into this random conversation with him where it just turns left and right constantly, to the point where he's talking about cellulite and maybe getting it sucked out of his ass because Albert, who we never meet, didn't like it, and then ends with, "I'm going to meet Albert for dinner, but he doesn't know about it yet." And then he swans off, and it's just he's like a tour de force. It's like a whirlwind.
I mean, I know you're not his biggest fan. I mean, that could be your rampant homophobia. I don't know. I think it's more likely. I'm just kidding. It's more likely that the script itself, again, it's relying on stereotypes there, and like you say, it's probably written by somebody very straight who didn't really know how to put it.
I think it's the way he performs, Steve. If he came in at a 10, which he did, he starts at a 10. There's nowhere to go but to either stay at a 10 or go down. He manages somehow to get to an 11. Like and screaming and yelling and whooping and stuff, which is kind of like,
he very much feels like, he feels a little bit like Aladdin's genie to me. He's kind of that zany sidekick character that that helps to tie everything together. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's nothing offensive about Hollywood. He seems to have a genuinely good heart. He cares about people. And I think he's a bit of the conscience of the story. And so, but strangely enough, I think he assumes that Jonathan is his new assistant. And Jonathan is left to basically finish the window display at night when Hollywood goes off for dinner with Albert. And this is where the interesting stuff around the display starts. And obviously, Kim Cattrall's character comes to life for the first time and obviously shocks him. What are your thoughts on proceedings from there?
It just kind of happened. He like turns his head and then she's like, "Hello," and he's like, "Whoa, you, yeah." Look, let's be fair. Kim Cattrall is lovely in the film. She's a very beautiful woman. She plays it very sweetly. I think she pitched it absolutely perfectly. Actually, I thought, I thought she did a good job. But she comes to life. I wasn't quite sure how that happened. So I'm guessing, thinking back, because she said she watched Jonathan, she could see him and she picked him. Did she possess the mannequin to bring it to life? So
this was a question I had, because she said she met Christopher Columbus as well when they're talking. So I wondered whether she'd been like the maidenhead on the front of the boat or something. It's a real it's a strange one because they don't really explain how her spirit goes from time to time.
It's a head scratcher. Like she said, she's moved through time. She's the one deciding which time she wants to live in. But she mentioned she's met Michelangelo. She's met Chris Columbus and a few other people as well that she talked about. And Jonathan gets a bit jealous, doesn't he? He's like, ooh.
And that was quite amusing that she says that Michelangelo was obsessed with a guy called David. And so there's kind of a two-tonal thing there that's saying, was it the statue that she's talking about, or was there a man called David that he, maybe there's undertones, there's more, more relationship going on there. Ooh. So I guess we can skip through some of the
but let me ask you this question, Steve. Let me ask you this one question before we move on. I'm dying to ask you it. You've just met a 4,000-year-old Egyptian woman named Emmy with an American accent who looks like Kim Cattrall. Mm-hmm. She's never been alive in this time period before. It's the first time she's had, an earthly body. Mm. Where do you take her and what do you do with her?
I'd say the best place to take her would be a woodwork shop and introduce her to all the power tools and let her just play with them, because that would obviously be the right thing to do, especially somebody who is essentially has the body of a mannequin.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. So they, for some reason, end up in and I'm talking a full industrial wood workshop in the middle of a department store where she starts turning on all the power tools. And Jonathan is dangerously close to things as well. And then she shoots a nail gun at him. Well, not at him, but just in his general direction. I agree with you. I think if you're going to live on the wild side, you're 4,000 years old. Here's look at all this fancy stuff we've got here that could, harm us.
So now, essentially, this is the bit that I didn't quite get right. Who is responsible for the creativity around these window displays? Because it feels very much like, is it Emmy, her name, the character? She seems to be the creative spark on it. And so he's taking the credit for her work around the displays that they have, and claiming to be this amazing window dresser. And I mean, it's very much a sign of the times, right? That a single window dressing could be enough to turn around the fortunes of an entire department store. And like nobody would even go in the store before there was a bicycle in the window, or somehow they managed to construct what looks like the front of a bus overnight.
They do some amazing things because it's based in Philadelphia, and it drives business to the store. And this is where the story and the rivalry comes in, because what we find out is James Spader's character is talking to the rival department store about a hostile takeover of that department store, and he's obviously passing secrets on. But that department store's profits begin to fall because the window dressing in this department store, created by the Mannequin, is better. So people are going in to buy stuff from it. Mm. It does sound a bit batshit crazy when you really put it into words, doesn't it?
Well, part of me says, like, you've got a city like Philadelphia. Surely there's room for two department stores to exist and not one of them be bankrupt and another one be successful. You could, there will still be people who will shop in one and, go into both. And whenever I go shopping, I'll check out multiple stores, not just one. So that felt a little bit contrived that one's profits would plummet as a result of the other ones. But
only enough room for one of them. But you are right. Emmy is the creative driving force behind the windows, with Jonathan being... I know he does have some creativity because he does do the tennis one. But look, what does every 80s film need halfway through it to show the fun of the characters? And this film does it.
It does it in spades. To me, that's a bit of a montage with some dancing and some dressing up. It's got to be done.
Absolutely. A fancy dress montage. They changed 7 different times in that montage to a song I've never heard of before. And they get up to so much fun. I'm guessing it's for our benefit, because if they were doing it just for themselves, they would look a bit mental. And he's playing a big giant organ and doing Phantom of the Opera, and they're doing all these little movie kind of spoofs that, as they're going through it and referencing lots of different things. And of course, that's where our police academy captain and his dog Rambo really come into the fore because they start to know some funny, start to see some funny things going on as well. And that's the scene that establishes the falling of love of Emmy and Jonathan through all these different, because sorry, I have to go back. So she takes all her clothes off when she first comes alive, and he freaks out a little bit and tries to cover her up. Now she's just like laughing and thinking it's quite funny. The second time she comes alive, which was the start of this dance montage, he tries to kiss her, but she bolts backwards, really shocked, and turns the music on, and then they start dancing and stuff like that. So it just felt just a little bit inconsistent for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the point that they're making, and I suppose Kim Cattrall's made some played some raunchier roles before and after this. Was it a sense of trying to establish that this wasn't what the character was, that this was a more wholesome character, that she was not a plaything, that she was a soul, and that she cared about, she wanted to be in love before she kissed him? To me, that's how that felt, that she was waiting, and I need to know if I have feelings for you really before I kiss you. So that's kind of what came across in my mind anyway.
Yeah. And the story movie, I think, as you said, we don't need to cover absolutely everything that happens, because what we've just described is exactly what happens. The rival store wants to know how they're doing these windows, and they start to look into it a little bit, and then start to see some weird relationship between Jonathan and the mannequin. Now, it's worth pointing out, if you've not seen this film, she's a woman when she's with Jonathan, but if anyone comes into the room or anyone sees her, she immediately turns into a mannequin, no matter what she's doing with Jonathan that moment in time. So whatever position she's in, or indeed what he's in, which is dangerous, right? That's, Steve, I know you and I have already spoke about this actually off air, about what would happen if.
Well, my concern was if they were, mid coitus, and then suddenly she basically healed up, what would happen to Jonathan's little Jonathan? It's a concern. It's a real concern.
I think they might need the wood shop.
Yeah, I think there might be. Let's get that first aid kit out. I'm not sure wood shop is probably the best term to use, but we've sort of said, like you say, that nobody else can see him. So I think because he's created so much success for the shop, everyone's overlooking what looks like a crazy man who is in love with an inanimate object that he keeps taking into ladies' toilets.
He takes her into a lady's toilets, and 3 of the shop assistants stand outside the toilet and think it's brilliant. They think it's brilliant that he's in there with her. And, Hollywood comes up and he's like, what's going on? And I want to be a part of this. And they're like, he's in there with a girl. No, he's in there with the dummy. And that's okay. And do you know it's so funny when he walked the ladies and she opened the door and she was like, hi. And he was like, I've got to go in here. And she's like, yes, of course. She's like so happy he chose a ladies' toilets in that scene. But there was an interesting thing. I actually have to say what I wrote down here, right? He gets attacked from the guy by Police Academy. And I wrote, I don't know why.
Because he says, I've been told to keep an eye on you, but I'm going to do it my way. And then he rolls his sleeves up and starts to hit him. And I was like, that's not the way to keep it. You're not in a position where you start hitting other employees just because you feel like it, you crazy bastard. It's just genuinely like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
It's a full-on fight. It's a full-on attack, isn't it? And he really, truncheon out and everything. He's a security guard in a department store. As in, his baton.
Well, what you mean is he does have a stick that he uses for his policing, which none of the other security guards, any of the others at that store or at the other store, have the baton like he does. They all just have a torch.
He's the alpha. When he goes to work at the other department store, when the James Spader character takes him, he takes over for some reason and is the man in charge. But I don't. He has some great insults in it though, and there was a few little zingers that he came out with. I think a couple of my favorites was he called someone. I think it was Jonathan actually called him a little pissant, which I enjoyed. But my favorite of all was he called him a fart blossom.
A fart blossom, great. He was, again. It goes back to the rampant homophobia and what have you that we witnessed in a lot of the stuff we've covered. But he refers to Hollywood as Mary, or Mary's finally got an assistant, which again doesn't seem to be, anything relevant, but just to sort of make him, I guess, appear nastier. Is the reason they sort of do that. And then his dog as well. We haven't mentioned the dog. First of all, we have Rambo, who's like a bulldog, who's terrified of the mannequin. Now, are we to assume that he saw her transform from the human to the mannequin, and that's why he's scared, or is he just genuinely scared of all mannequins? I couldn't quite work it out.
I think it's. I think he's just in the wrong profession to be a dog security guard. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know many dogs patrolling a high street shop.
And the security guard literally sacks the dog off. It's like, yeah, I've got another one now. Don't care. It's like it just goes off and gets himself a German Shepherd. Yeah, an Alsatian, doesn't he?
Called Terminator.
Yeah. So he's obviously gone for the whole action star thing in that. So
they kidnap the mannequin as a way.
Well,
so they
Spader gets fired, doesn't he? So he basically gets fired because they try to steal the mannequin.
Steve, I want to offer you a job, and I want to steal you to design my windows for you. And I have pictures of you getting off with a mannequin because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm then going to steal the mannequin and entice you over to offer you a job, and then I'll give you the mannequin back. What an offer! What a way to do it. I mean, how overly complicated is that?
Well, you could just say, I'm going to show everybody these photos. That might have been sufficient to go, you know what, that blackmail works. Instead, what I'm going to do is kidnap essentially an inanimate object and threaten you. So, I
don't think threatening Jonathan to show people the picture is going to work for him. I think most people have now seen him courting this mannequin. No one seems to care. He doesn't really care. And he doesn't care because he knows she's a woman.
Yeah, he realizes that. Somebody who really cares is Roxy at this point. She's really like, I don't understand, why is this woman is better than me? Why is this inanimate object better than me? And you know what? If you've ever seen the film Lars and the Real Girl, I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, this is like if we made it really dark and made her a sex doll and then didn't have any comedy in it. But apart from that, yeah, there's kind of like a total thing that, yeah, if you watch one or the other, there are some similarities, but not many.
Maybe the director of that or the writer of that had the same discussion that we're having now, so we'll do it better, and we'll get Ryan Gosling to take a sex dummy to dinner. So I agree with you with Roxy, right? Now, she's not an emotional character, and that's the only thing I thought was missing. I wanted to see a bit more emotion from her because I thought there's obviously a bit of pain there, and she must have had feelings for Jonathan, but she just goes the other way, and I think she's incredibly influenced by the owner of this other department store. She wants to impress him, so she'll do anything to get ahead, and to her downfall, I still think she's the victim.
I think to some extent, until she decides to be vindictive and takes the mannequin to the recycling room, I think is the only way you can call it, because they've got some sort of waste shredder.
It's like a
giant shredder, isn't it? And throws all of the mannequins into the shredder. In time that Jonathan manages, with the help of Hollywood, and this is where Hollywood comes into his own, when Hollywood whips out his hose and starts hosing down the security guards that have chased Jonathan through the store.
Right. Before he does that,
yes.
What does he do with his car and why?
Well, this is the thing. Yes, I forgot to mention that. So Hollywood drives Jonathan over to the rival store to help him. And then when they arrive and park up outside, Hollywood has like this big, I don't know if it's a Cadillac or something, but it's a great big American car. He gets a monogrammed, personalized cover that says Hollywood on it and covers the car up. Yeah. Which just is completely random. I mean, I know they're just showing his eccentricity. Can't say the words. They're showing his eccentricity and his, creativity and his flair. But it just felt like, why are you doing this? Go in there, hurry up.
I don't know, but they fast forward it as well, so it's like they keep every single painful corner in, but it's all sped up, so it's like it's going, and I don't know what it served to the story because we never see the car again and we never see that. But so like one thing, it could be the getaway car when they go in and do this heist to get out. The second thing is his name's written on it.
Yeah,
so
it's a little obvious whose it is.
It really is. And then they get into this boardroom, and I don't know about you, but it escalates really, really quickly in this boardroom. Things just fall apart almost immediately. There's no professionalism. These are business people, by the way, who these are executives on a board, and they all start fighting. And then, before we get to the bit with the host, I don't know if you picked up on this. There is about 6 security guards chasing Jonathan and smashing the shit out of that department store that they work in.
I noticed this. So as they're running through the store, they're literally pushing rails of clothes over that aren't even in their way. They're just pushing them over for effect. That's like
there's one stamping on the glass case, just breaking all the glass.
that's the police guy. He's literally walking through the glass. I'm like, you're genuinely going to injure yourself like that. If this is not sugar glass, which obviously it is for the movie, but why are you doing this? What possible benefit could there be? And like I say, you're working in this store and you're destroying it. You're kind of really undermining the whole point of trying to be a security guard.
So Roxy tries to shred the mannequin. Jonathan's there trying to save her. Hollywood, as you said, has his big hose and he's hosing them all down while giving some quips. And I wrote a couple of these quips down, actually. I don't know if you remember some of them. So the first one he does is he's got the big water. It's all spraying out. And he goes, 2 things I love to do is fight and kiss boys. So he says that. That's one thing while he's hosing them down. And then he says, this is what being a man is all about. Again, I'm not sure what he's mean. So, I mean, he's coming out with some of these comments and stuff, and I'm sitting there not wanting to laugh, but laughing because A, you're thinking, who are you talking to? Are you talking to them? And B, why is you spraying down men with a hose? Why is that what being men is all about? I don't know. It just made me laugh.
I think it was really a control thing, wasn't it? And it was very much a phallic statement. This is what men do. They go around with their hose out. Hosing everyone
loves to
down.
Fight and kiss boys. He said that
exactly. But I think that's
he loves to do.
Don't we all? And so eventually, then that gives Jonathan the time to get into the room and try and save Emmy. Now he gets to the point where they're on the conveyor belt and she is dangling precariously over the edge. And bearing in mind, he's carried her under his arm whenever she's been a mannequin for a long time here. Suddenly, he can't hold her weight when he's holding her up. And I thought the arm's going to fall off, but no. And then, to make matters worse, she turns back into a human while she's hanging from it. And that's obviously increased her weight too. And I'm like, just become a mannequin for a second. Let him just throw you out of there. You'd be well away. But that doesn't happen. But what we don't realise is that as he does this and as he kisses her, as he pulls her to safety, the creepiest maintenance guy ever is pervily watching this happen, right? And that's not the worst thing he does as a security guard. That's not the worst thing. But at this time, it proves that I don't know whether it's like we were saying, the curse is broken, but she no longer has this restriction of not being able to be seen. So we think is this moment when she's truly fallen in love with him, and she had to fall in love with him to become human again full time. I mean, that's what I took from it.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I never looked at that deeply, to be honest with you. So the really creepy security guard with those jam jar glasses on. Now, before that, Roxy's lying under a pile of trash and stuff,
we'll get to that, I guess, in a second.
So yeah, and then the security guard kind of does see her and then starts hunting around for his own mannequin.
Because he's assuming, well, if he's just managed to get himself a hot girlfriend, then I'm going to do the same, and is kissing bits of mannequins, and then obviously Roxy has sort of passed out in the pile of mannequins, and he's like, "Oh, here we go, here's one," and he tries to kiss her, and she goes, "No, get off me." But that doesn't put him off, so he just gets more physical and more aggressive.
He gets handsy. He gets really handsy, and she's like, "Stop touching me! Get off me! Get off me!" Yeah. But it's okay because she's a villain, right?
But is she? I don't know if she. Yeah, I don't know if she is. And then they storm in. The security guards finally storm in, and Hollywood's there, and the owner of somehow the owner of the Estelle Getty character, somehow she knows this is all going off, and has found security tape footage of James Spader.
She installed it. She installed the security tape footage and then pulls out a big massive VHS with the baddies and shows them it and says, "I've got it all on tape right here." Now, anyone in the right mind would have lumped one in the head and just taken the tape.
I was like, you could literally snatch it out of her hand right now and all your problems would be over, but they didn't. And then she's like threatens them to say, "Look, you can't do this," but with no real repercussions. Just don't be bad anymore. And he's like, "Okay," and and then
but it's the interaction when Jonathan says, "Did you see everything on those tapes?" And she just says, "Only the things I wanted to see." Wink, wink.
It's like, which means she's sat at her home flicking the bean to him making out with her.
That's a golden girl. Stop it.
To him making out with a lady's got needs. So
stop. So let's just recap. Just for Roxy, right? Just for Roxy, because she's been harassed 4 times by the Italian guy. Her boss has come onto her as well in a really creepy way and keeps cuddling her and going, "You're going to be the next protege." And then the security guard kind of comes onto her. Jonathan basically dumped her for what looked like to be a mannequin, and she lost her job at the very end. He said, "You're fired. You're fired." And you hear her say in the background, "Please don't fire me. I've got my bills to pay. I've just got an apartment. I can't afford to not live." And he says, "I don't care. You're fired." And then they go off. I want to see a sequel of Roxy. She's going to be on the street. She's going to be trying to find that job. And when someone says, "What happened to you?" she's like, "Well, I've been harassed a bunch of times and my boyfriend dumped me for a
sex toy.
And it's really hard to explain.
There's some serious PTSD coming her way, isn't there? In that, how do you explain that? And then we get a really odd sequence right at the end where it looks like they've got another display in the window, and everybody's completely still. And then he says, "And now declare you husband and wife." It's like, what? So are we supposed to expect that you've done the whole ceremony in the window and then stood still for 30 seconds as a window display and then done the end of it?
They are that classy. They literally got married in the department store. Hollywood does the ceremony. Estelle Getty is I don't know, she's giving the bride away or something.
This was the other thing, because Jonathan doesn't appear to have a family at all, does he? There's no one there that appears to be related to him at all.
It explains so much.
Yeah, in fact, nobody in this whole thing has a family member. I mean, notice nobody has any relative in the movie.
Emmy does. Emmy has a mum.
Well, yeah, true, but that was in ancient Egypt. So anybody in Philadelphia, not one of them has a relative that's alive that we see them interact with, because Estelle Getty's dad had passed away the year before. Everybody else literally had no relatives whatsoever. So it's a bit of a strange collection of people and then all these people I've only been working with for a few months, and they're all at my wedding. So
it's true, and the only final thing I'll say about all of this one is Jonathan wakes up in the middle of the department store, lying on I would say a bed of fur coats that the store is selling, after having coitus with Emmy, and she's been kidnapped now. She's gone, and everyone stood around watching. There's all these people stood around, which I can only assume are customers. And
I thought they might be other store members or other members of employees.
I thought they were customers, because the store is genuinely open. So the employees have come in and opened the store and just left him there. He slept through all of that. And then when he wakes up, for some reason, they all start clapping and cheering. And I don't know why.
I think it was that, because he's put all these weird displays on in the windows. It's almost like an art installation. He's showcasing these furs by lying naked in them. And that's the only thing I could take from that's what they assumed he was doing. Otherwise, why would you be applauding it? It doesn't make sense.
And the only other, did you notice one thing with Hollywood? Hollywood started clicking his fingers about halfway through the film every time he was going to leave a scene.
He's like, "Foxy comedy."
Yeah. But nothing is explained. The Kim Cattrall's character, Emmy, she makes 2 references to the gods that have cursed her, and with a bit of a wink and a nod. But that's about as much explanation as we get as to what I was going to swear, the L is going on here. And that's what freaked me out, because I was like, I don't know what's going on. Why is this happening? Explain something, please.
But you know what? It was just a feel-good romp, right? That was just... There wasn't need for explanation. This was an 80s movie of fun, excess, music, and laughter, and hijinks. Okay.
Well, do you know why I think it was so successful? Do you know why I think it was so successful?
Go for it. Tell me.
Your first dance at the wedding. That's why it was so successful.
Obviously, they knew that was coming.
Yeah, that song, over the wedding scene, saved the entire film.
For you?
I think it comes in at 1 minute 25. The song was nominated. It won an Oscar, actually. It went to the #1 charts. And because it went to... And that song came out before the film, and it drove the audience to the film. The film was made for like 5 million. It made like 46 million, which was a lot back then. Spurned a sequel. I think it was because of the song. And I think people were so excited and waiting for the song, and felt so elated at the end when that song came out, that people was like, what a great film that was. But when you really look at it, it's like, actually, it wasn't a good film.
Okay. So we're going to have to get your rating on this one then, Mike. So we're going to say, how many out of 5, how many coat hangers do you give this movie? Well,
I don't think there's going to be any surprises here, Steve. I rate this movie, and I'm going to go against the grain here. I'm giving this 2 coat hangers.
Oh, that's a controversial decision by Mr. Garlia there. You know what? For nostalgia's purposes and for my personal connection, I'm going to give this 4. 4, my highest rating so far, out of 5 coat hangers for this movie.
I am
shocked. I have a feeling that more of our listeners will agree with me than agree with you.
I knew we would have a split opinion on this one, Steve. I came into this knowing it. But I'm sorry, 2 out of 5 for me.
Well, and that's fine. So if you have a different opinion, or if you agree with me, or if you agree with Mike, then why not let us know? Let us know on Twitter @ScriptsBad, or on Instagram, we're @BadScripts, or you can let us know on the Facebook page as well. Drop us a line on our website. You can see it all on Linktree/BadScripts. That is all we can talk about tonight, Mike. It's been a pleasure as always. Next week, we will have another movie from another one of our characters, so keep an eye out on social media through the week, and we will let you know what that's going to be. But from me, good night. And from you, Mike?
Nothing's gonna stop us now. Good night.
Good night. Bad Scripts was written and performed by Mike Garlia and Steve Jones, a Beach Tide production.